You're listening to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast, the place to come for movie reviews, along with some extra fun talk about movie-related topics like box office and awards. You can find us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and basically any place else you can find podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter for even more content. If you like what we do, feel free to share us with your friends, like and leave feedback wherever you listen to us, and let us know what you think. Now, let's get on with the show. I have an observation about this film, actually. Believe it or not. Ryan, I have an observation about this movie. And it is not the fact that Liam Neeson is in yet another action film. The Marksman, by the way, if you're listening at home, which you are because this is a podcast and that's what you do. The Marksman, Liam Neeson, rancher in Arizona, right up against the border, dealing with immigrants crossing the border illegally, going across his land, and he deals with that fallout on a day-to-day basis. That is not necessarily what this particular movie is about. But I would like to point out, this is my observation, ready? The director worked with Clint Eastwood on all of his uber patriotic movies as like a second AD. So I was wondering, actually, by the time I got to the end of it, if Clint Eastwood was involved, and he was not listed anywhere. So, but speaking of uber patriotic movies, this film's a little difficult to get a 100% beat on, because it is about our rancher who finds at the gate a woman and her son crossing. Cartel members pull up at the fence, say, send them back. He says no. Firefight. He winds up with the boy and has to decide what to do with him or let him go back to Mexico to the cartel. That's a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I appreciate about the film is that he is not, I mean, he's someone who lives basically on the front lines. And he's not really, I mean, he's trying to figure out what the right thing to do is and what the humane thing to do is. And sometimes that just doesn't line up, I guess. Or at least it's far more complicated of an argument or a conversation than let them in or keep them out sort of,
right.
Black and white sort of thing. And so I appreciate that. Because he does stuff that, and this is all just in the setup. So he does stuff that some people would be like, well, that's incredibly nice and not incredibly. And he acknowledges the aspects of his actions. He acknowledges, that they're happy, sad sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's a guy who's lived out there forever. His wife had cancer. She has passed. Cancer treatment was expensive. He doesn't have money. He's going to lose his land, which is all he basically has. And he has
the best. The best and worst fortune drop in his lap.
Yes, but I like that he's a very complicated character in the sense that he's not really. I mean, again, it's going back to he kind of exists in a gray area. What is his motivation? Why does he do these things? And is he doing something out of kindness, or is he doing it for personal self-interest, or is there more to it than that? And I think there is more to it than that. I appreciated that this film, while in many ways is, a Liam Neeson action film in all the senses that you would think, I thought that it had a little more weight than particularly Honest Thief, which, was what it was. But this felt like it had a little more substance to it.
Well, Honest Thief was that was a fantasy.
Sure.
But this is much more grounded.
It is. It's still an action movie.
Right.
You've still got the cartel chasing him, and there's a lot of tropes that are involved in this film that So it's not completely realistic by any stretch of the imagination, but it does have real issues in it, and to me that made it a more attractive film.
It's a little more compelling that way.
Yeah, rather than just guy loves girl, corrupt FBI, whatever.
Right.
I mean that. So, and ironically, I got to tell that to Liam today.
Oh, did you really?
I talked to Liam in his. Yeah, it's weird. Talking to a guy sitting in his living room, but that's where we're at. But no, that was one of the things that he was drawn to about this particular project. Was he's very passionate about immigration and things along those lines, and so that was something that he really keyed in on. And I think that's really what kind of got him through the script, because it's interesting that you say that the director did the stuff with Eastwood, because I don't really feel like this is a patriotic film.
Well, it has its moments. As I said, it's not.
I mean, obviously he's a serviceman. He served, and he's certainly not. I don't know. I mean,
no, he's not. He's not one of Eastwood's blazing, red, white, and blue American heroes. But it's still. I mean, and that's why I said it's got that flavor to it. But he is very complex. He's a Marine, but he was in Vietnam. So, he kind of got shit on. He watched men die. He killed men. He just, he's trying to live his life, but the immigration is causing him problems. But he understands why they're doing it. But in the end, he is still, and I know this phrase turns people off. He's a law and order guy with a heart.
I mean, so it's just inaccurate. I think, I think he. I think that he has sympathy. And again, I think it's a question of he wants to do what's right and he wants to do what's humane. And sometimes those aren't perfectly aligned, or, particularly from the standpoint of the people trying to get in, and he has a relationship with Border Patrol. We need to kind of throw that in there, that it's pretty important two aspects of the film.
Right.
And there's a couple moments in there that aren't really that realistic, but that's okay. There are a few, there are a few times in this film where you're like, I don't know about that, but you know what? It had to happen to make the story work. And I often talk about ambition, and that, I think this film wanted to be a little bit more than just another Liam Neeson action film, and I think it succeeded at that. I don't think it's a great Liam Neeson action film, but I do think.
But I think that's a good thing. The action is very compressed. It's not action.
No, it's
which
not.
Is good.
It's here and there, and there's a lot of it's a road movie. Yeah. As well. It's just a road movie where the people on the road trip happen to be being chased by a cartel.
Right.
Over the top cartel.
Is it really though?
I have no idea.
If I killed a cartel guy's brother, he might hunt me down.
Well, he might, but there's certain aspects to it that are just going to all right. But I like the fact that he's a very morally challenged character throughout. It's hard to, you kind of have a sense of him and you kind of think, what he'd like to be, but you also kind of get a sense of who he really is. And there's some anger in there, and I don't think it's unjustified. And, there's it's more complicated than I think I was expecting it to be.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I think Liam Neeson's often a better actor than the scripts that he's given. But he's, when I talked to him today, he was very passionate about, immigration and kids being separated from their families and how he doesn't believe in that. And, And that was part of the reason that he, did this film, was he was very passionate about these things that are in the news. And that was, I mean, it's nice to hear as well. And we also talked about, I guess, how he had to talk Luc Besson into letting him be in Taken, which was kind of a fun conversation.
Wow.
Yeah.
He had to fight his way in. That's funny.
Yeah, yes, he had to pitch his way into Taken, which is, I mean, at this point, you look back at where that movie went and how it spawned. It almost, changed his entire, well, to a certain extent, it did change his entire career. But he basically had to talk Luc Besson into even considering him for that. So that was fun. But no, it was great to talk to Liam in his living room. Very nice guy. Didn't get a lot of time with him, but very nice guy. And yeah, he's just the sort of person that obviously could talk for hours and hours and hours and has lots and lots of stories. And you kind of just want him to sit there and tell the stories.
You want him to lose track of time.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's just, there's just so many layers to his career and his life. And he's been around for, a long time now. And he has gone through an evolution where he can do very serious art house films and turn around and do a not so serious action movie, and it doesn't feel like that's out of, like, that's what he does. That's he has a tremendous amount of range, and I think that that's not a lot of actors get away with that.
No, it's
particularly later in their life. I mean, or at least sometimes you can transition. I guess early on you were in action films, and then later in your life you're not in nearly as intense. You're more dramas and things. But his was almost the opposite.
Yeah.
Where his career as an action star came late. And he had this. And he had to talk somebody into it.
That is just kind of weird. That is actually really weird.
No, but I like this. We usually get one of these a year. Now we've got a couple Liam Neeson action films in the past few months. This is the better of the two.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I enjoyed Honest Thief more than you did, but this is clearly the winner between the two.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I did, and Honest Thief is just what it was.
Yeah,
it was. There was no complexity to the character. It was, wasn't a bad movie. It was just a Liam Neeson action film. Whereas I think this is a Liam Neeson action film with a little better writing.
Yeah.
And I guess there are moments in it that seem a little, like I said, a little over the top or whatever. But I mean, all things considered, this was a far more rewarding film, and I think there was more suspense and there was more. I mean, I think this one just has a lot more going for it.
Yeah, I completely agree. It definitely does. It's more grounded, which makes everything else work. Which allows you to accept the things that just aren't quite there. Aren't quite real.
There's like a couple moments at the end where you're like, that's kind of strange, but also okay, that's interesting. And there's a kind of like a nod of respect between the two men, and there's some stuff that probably sounded really cool on paper that doesn't quite work for me on film, but close enough, good enough.
Yeah, and by then it's okay. So yeah, I know where you're going. So, but yeah, there's a couple parts where you're like, I would never do that. That just seems like a poor life choice, especially at the point that they've gotten to. But it's okay in the context of the film and his character specifically. So
it doesn't
worked.
It doesn't end poorly. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, there are a few bumps along the way.
Well, I won't say it doesn't end badly. Kind of get that Shane ending, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, I'm fine with the way that it ends.
Right.
I'm fine with,
No.
it wasn't like, oh, that ending almost just destroyed the movie. It wasn't anything like that.
No, 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 not at all. It's a very understated
Although
ending, which is weird.
the
It's a very
the
understated ending, but
the,
it's still
the
impactful.
yeah, the
So,
scene by the fire had me cracking up a little bit.
oh yeah, it's like no.
If you know, there's a band in England that was called the KLF, and they have been popping up in news as they're going to maybe reunite, or they're releasing their stuff digitally, and they did something similar in real life to what happens in this movie. So if you have
Oh,
any idea about the KLF, they have the KLF moment
oh my
in
god,
this movie. So it's not as far fetched as it's people have actually done it. So
that is crazy, 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 crazy. You'll know it when you see it, people. So
yeah,
I guess we're both going to recommend The Marksman if you're a Liam
yeah,
Neeson
I think
fan.
so. Yeah.
It's only PG-13, which is actually kind of surprising.
Yeah, it runs up. It's a pretty heavy PG-13, or at least it feels like a pretty heavy.
Right?
The
I'm
language
thinking
isn't
about
really
it.
there, but I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, there's not a lot of language, and the
No.
violence is not very grotesque. But there is, but it's a pretty heavy PG-13.
Yeah. So
Um,
don't take your 7-year-olds. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. So let's not do that. But no, it is no. It's definitely the better of the two that he's put out this year or in the last few months. So yes, that is two. We've got some more coming. We're going to be talking at some point in the future about a film called One Night in Miami. Go watch the trailer and then watch for us to be talking about that one. And we've got a few more coming, so stay tuned for those. And we will be covering Sundance. We'll be doing a run up to that in a little bit. And then we'll be talking about movies that hopefully we've shared the viewing experience of for you as well. Because there's actually quite a few pretty good looking films
yeah,
this year.
no,
So,
I've only been able to look at it kind of on the surface, but
but
there's
yeah.
always surprises.
Yep. But we'll be doing an episode on that if you're a Sundance fan. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, I'm Mark. That's Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.
Don't forget to like us, follow us on social media at VS Movie Podcast, or go straight to the website, vsmoviepodcast.com, and you can get access to everything we've ever recorded and put out there without dealing with Apple or Google or Spotify. So take it easy, everyone, and we will talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.